Okay, I have now sewn the standard sleeve block into the armhole of this princess line bodice. Can you see that we've got that very long dart which throws shape into the elbow and suppresses the wrist of the sleeve? Now that big long dart isn't really very attractive looking, but I'm now going to show you how to put that into the underarm seam. So here I've an example of the big long dart. Just manipulate it into the underarm seam, and we've got a little tiny dart now throwing shape into the elbow. Got rid of the big long dart here. Okay, so here's our sleeve block, and you can see we've got this big dart. And what this dart is, it's suppressing the cuff of the sleeve into the wrist, but it's throwing fullness into the elbow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that big dart into the underarm seam because it's pretty ugly looking. So I've got to draw around the pattern on paper, but the first thing I've got to do is mark that red line, and then line up your sleeve, centre of your sleeve in the green line with the red line. Draw around it. Don't forget to mark in the notches. You know you've got 2 notches here on the back, and 1 notch in the front, and 1 at the top of the sleeve crown. So I've already marked around this. So you've done dart manipulation already. So what I'm doing is putting that big dart in here. So it's same principle as what you did with the bodice block. I'm physically just going to draw a line here into the elbow line. I'm going to cut it out. Cut out the big dart inlay. And close over. And here we've got a little dart here. Okay. So clearly I take that up, and I've now got to create the dart inlay and add on seams. Okay, so I've now drawn around the sleeve here, added on the seams, and I'm just going to remind you how to fold the dart inlay. The fold in the dart inlay will go down towards the wrist. So I'm taking my dart legs here, I'm folding them up, and I've already added on the seam allowance onto this. With my dart inlay folded, I cut. And there I've got my dart inlay. And I drill hole the end of the dart, and I notch where the darts are folded. It's not very nice looking, it's a bit. Okay, so now I've moved the ugly big dart into the underarm seam. It's going to be much more attractive in this location. Now in this video I'm going to be showing you how to set a sleeve into an armhole. So what I'm doing, I'm setting in a full sleeve, but with the long dart moved into the elbow here to create shape. And if you look at the shape of the sleeve here, you can see that the sleeve is no longer straight. It's beginning to sort of take on an angular shape. Now you always know, guys, the back and the front of the sleeve by the sleeve head here. The hollow section in the sleeve head is always going to be the front of the sleeve, and we've got one notch in the front, and the straighter section, less hollow, is always the back, and on the back of the sleeve we have the two notches, and you always have a notch at the center of your sleeve. And right, I'm going to insert this sleeve into one of the princess lines that I made last week. Okay, so first of all I take the sleeve and I work out what's the left sleeve and what's the right sleeve. Well, we know that the two notches go to the back, so what I'm inserting here is the left sleeve into the left armhole. So here I've got my left armhole. Now watch what I'm doing. I'm turning the garment inside out, and I'm going to be working in a circle. Okay, so I start off by aligning, again it's the right sides to right sides here when inserting the sleeves. So I'm aligning the two seams. So the side seam of the garment, which I'm aligning with the underarm seam of the sleeve. Lining those, and I'm putting in my pin. Remember, I always put pins in at a right angle. So what I'm doing I'm aligning the curves. Now it's quite difficult to insert sleeves because you're sewing seams, which are, I've got two different, the edges of the seam have two different types of curve. So I'm coming up here and I'm aligning my double notches. Again, you wouldn't mark these in pen, but I have snipped and I've also marked them in pens so that you can see what I'm doing in the video. And I've got my center notch here, and that's aligning with the shoulder seam. And again, I'm putting my pin in at a right angle. Working my way around the armhole, here until I get my next two notches matching. And fantastic, they're matching. And that's a single notch, so we know that's the front of the sleeve. It's a bit fiddly because we're trying to get the curve of the sleeve head into the armhole. So once again, look, I'm putting my pins in at right angles. So it's beginning to all take shape. Now what we've got here is a wee bit of fullness here, it looks like. So what I'm doing, I'm just, again, putting an extra pin in there. Okay, now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine now and sew it. Right, so here I've got my sleeve pinned into the armhole. I'm working from the inside of the garment. So the body of the bodice is going down on the feed dogs, and I'm working from inside the sleeve. Now, you know we put a centimetre seam on everything, so I'm just taking a centimetre seam because that's what I've put on my pattern. So I'm just doing a quick back tack, and I'm making sure that my edges of the fabric are aligning. Okay, so I'm coming around. This is quite a slow job. You'll need to just sew maybe a centimetre at a time. Now here I come up to my first set of notches. They're aligning, can you see here? And I'm just making sure my fabric's nice and flat. Okay. I'm using my fingers a lot to make sure that I'm manipulating the fabric so that it'll sew nice and smoothly and my edges of the fabric are aligned. I don't want to sew the sleeve in with any little tucks at the sleeve head. Just going around, taking out my pins as I go. Once again, my notch here is aligning with the shoulder seam on this bodice, which is the princess bodice I'm sewing this into. Seems to be a bit of fullness here, so I'm having to use my fingers to very gently persuade the fullness to go into the sleeve head and sew onto the garment. So I'm almost around now. These notches seem to be a little bit off. I'm just moving them around so that they're not. There we go. They're aligning now, and I now can carry on sewing. So I've sewn round in a circle, and that's me back to the beginning again. Right, and here you can see I've got the sleeve head inserted into the armhole. Can you see I've got some little ripples here at the edge, and that's the fullness in the sleeve head. So whenever I turn that through, you will see that I've now got my sleeve beautifully sewn into the armhole. And the next time you're going to see this is on the mannequin. Okay, I have now sewn the standard sleeve block into the armhole of this princess line bodice. Can you see that we've got that very long dart which throws shape into the elbow and suppresses the wrist of the sleeve? Now that big long dart isn't really very attractive looking, but I'm now going to show you how to put that into the underarm seam. So here I've an example of the big long dart. Just add it, manipulate it into the underarm seam, and we've got a little tiny dart now throwing shape into the elbow. I've got rid of the big long dart here, and I've thrown it up. Here's the big long dart, and I've manipulated it into the underarm seam, and got a nice little tiny dart there. It's much more attractive.